Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Nathan Fox. That's Ben Olson. Together, we are the founders of LSATdemon.com and the Thinking LSAT podcast. We have an email here from Jay. Hello, this is just a general question about studying for the LSAT. When taking a practice test, should I take the 3-section or the 4-section tests? I know in the new LSAT, there will be 3 scored sections and 1 unscored section. However, I am unsure of what number of sections will be the most accurate and helpful to study with. In the past, when the LSAT was 5 sections, I noticed that study guides only included the scored sections of the test. What should I do? I guess we could explain, this is from Jay. I guess we should explain why study guides only included the scored sections of the test, first of all. I mean, I wrote my first 3 books, Cheating the LSAT, Breaking the LSAT, Exposing the LSAT. Those were prep test 61, 62, and 63. The reason why those did not have the experimental section is that the experimental section isn't released to us. We don't have access to those experimental sections. Now, I could have picked a section from an older test and inserted it into that test as a faux experimental section. But I just didn't care about that because I wanted people to be able to do the test, calculate their score, and then get to the real work, which is figuring out why you missed the ones you missed.
Yeah. And certainly if someone had wanted to experience what it is like to take a 5-section test, they could have done exactly what you said, thrown in a section from another test. They would want to review it just like the others. They wouldn't, of course, include it into their grade, but they could still grade that section and learn from it. But yeah, we only had 4 sections in those study guides because that's all that was ever released.
And I guess
all
that's
you need to get a score.
And I guess that is what we now do with the Demon, right? The Demon is, it offers people the choice to take 3 and 4-section tests. Is that correct?
Actually, so in the Demon, you really can't mess this up now.
Okay.
So the way it works now is that you can take any test that has been previously released in the Demon, and you have 2 options. You can take a 3-section version of that test, or you can take a 4-section version of that test. If you take a 3-section version, then you're going to get the flex score, which is exactly like the score you're going to get when you take it officially these days. I know these days you're taking 4 sections, but you got to remember one of those is the experimental section, which means it won't be graded. It won't affect your score. And so the balance of the test is 33% logical reasoning, 33% logic games, and 33% reading comprehension.
Okay.
But if you decide in the Demon to take a 4-section test, you say, no, I don't want to do a 3-section test. I want to do a 4-section test like the actual exam. It will give you it will give you 3 sections from the test you chose, and then allow you to choose a 4th section. Now, some people have decided to take the second logical reasoning section as their 4th section, which will appear randomly anywhere in that test.
I should explain. Yeah. The old test had 2 sections of logical reasoning. Yep. The new test only has 1. Yeah. So what Ben is saying here is you can choose, like if I go back to prep test 61,
yep,
as my experimental section, I can take the other section of LR that was actually released from that test. Or what's my other option?
To take a section from any other test in your
Okay, just a random section.
Yep.
Got it. Will I know which section is experimental while I'm doing it?
You will not. I mean, granted, if you see 2 game sections, you know that one of them was the experimental, but
I don't know which one is experimental.
You can't tell in the Demon, just like on the actual test. Now, when it's all over, the Demon will show you, oh, look, you ended up doing the experimental second. And the first one was real, the third one was real, and the 4th one was real. But the point is you can't take a traditional 4-section test in the Demon and have the balance of the test be 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%.
Because that's just not how the test is.
That's not how the test is done anymore. So you can't mess up in the Demon. So whether you choose a 3-section test or a 4-section test, you're still going to get a 3-section test either by itself or a 3-section test plus 1 experimental. And the grade will be the way it should be.
Good. Can I still review that experimental section and learn from my mistakes?
Absolutely. And you
So the
should.
videos and written explanations and everything are still there for that
Absolutely.
experimental section. I will have done my best on it because I won't know that it was experimental, just like I won't on the real test. The difference is I'll get to learn from my mistakes because it was in its day a real section and we have access to that test now.
Yeah. So to answer Jay's question, in the Demon, I don't care which one you do. I think sure there's some value in doing a 4-section test, in part because you get the 10-minute break between sections 2 and 3, and you'll know exactly what's going to happen on test day. Do you need to do that every time? No, I don't care. Partly it depends on how much time you have in your day. If you're like, I only have time to do 3 sections, fine, do the 3-section test. That's sufficient. Just like Nathan was talking about a long time ago. That said, what I don't want you doing is going somewhere else, finding a 4-section test and then doing that. I don't see, like, that's weird to me because you're going to get a test that's weighted differently.
Yeah. If you do old tests as a 4-section test and use the old scoring scale, you're going to be weighting logical reasoning as 50% of your result and games as 25, reading comp as 25. That's just not the balance of the test anymore.
Yep.
It's now 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And the Demon makes all those adjustments for you, so you don't have to worry about it. But I don't really care. Honestly, I don't give a shit if you even do a 3-section test. I think that the game on the LSAT is 35-minute sections, or 53 or 70 if you're accommodated. But I know lots of people who have been really successful without ever doing a full test in their prep. Now you do want to be doing timed practice regularly. But a lot of people do like 1-time section every day plus review. And if you do that and you never do a full test with 4 sections back to back to back to back, I think you're going to be just fine. If you get good enough at those time sections, I think you're going to be just fine. If you do decide to do full tests, we would never recommend more than 1 a week.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary.
Well, it's also counterproductive because if you do 2 or 3 or 4 tests a week, you end up shortchanging yourself on the review almost universally. People they do the test, they calculate their score on a 120 to 180 scale, and that's all they give a shit about. They forget to review. And you can't do that. It's a big inefficiency in your studies if you're not reviewing. I find that people who do 35-minute sections and then immediately review, well, they're immediately reviewing, which is the important part.
Exactly. One way to think about it is the only people who might be permitted to do 2 full tests a week. And I'm talking about like a full test where you're sitting down and doing the 3 sections back to back, are people who are already scoring in the 170s because they're going to be able to get through that and they're not going to have that many to review. So they can review it when they're done. But even then it's like, what's the value? Like you might get even more value out of doing the section and then just immediately reviewing.
Yeah.
So
if you're scoring
in the extreme cases, it's not
Ben's
that helpful.
point is if you're scoring 150, when you do a full test, you're going to miss like shit. How many questions? 30 questions or something, like a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, and this, we need to double down on this advice, I think, as frequently as possible. If you're scoring 150, you're barely understanding. I mean, like there's half of the test that you're not understanding.
Yeah.
And you've got to correct those misunderstandings now. And so when you do a full test and you get a 150 on it, that means there's a lot of work that you need to continue to do with that test. A lot more than you think. You need to really thoroughly review every single mistake you made. And that's going to take you time and energy. And if you instead do a new practice test tomorrow, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Like you're just wasting a bunch of time.
Yeah.
All right.
If you have questions about what tests to take, how to study, how to get into law school, how to not pay for law school, email daily@lsatdemon.com. Thanks for listening.